welcome back to Navigating Leadership Realities. Today's topic is what is happening that 65% of the workforce is still disengaged, and what can leaders do? And so my colleague, Colleen Lewis of Maverick Trailblazing. Hi,
Hi,
Colleen.
everyone.
And I'm Jamie Davidoff from Spark Success. We'll want to explore this with you and look at, what's happening that there's still such a high level of disengagement in the workforce, and more importantly, what you can do about it as a leader to increase engagement so that your people are more productive, aligned, and engaged with your organizational objectives. So, Colleen, what comes up for you when you think about this?
Well, I find it interesting that, over the past 15, 20 years that this stat hasn't changed, or it's changed very little at all. So it kind of intrigues one to try to understand what's missing, what's not happening that could be to engage people. And, from my experience and from what I've seen, what it gets down to is really having communication and really working on building relationships between individuals.
Yes. And I mean, communication is really how we build relationships as well.
Right.
So we wanted to share the simple pyramid diagram with you just to illustrate the importance of relationships in the context of goals. And so as you can see at the bottom, the foundation here of an organization is the strong interpersonal relationships, which creates productive relationships. And that then leads to, the ultimate goal, team goals and organizational goals. So how do we build these strong interpersonal relationships that are the foundation of organizational success? These points that we're about to share come from a website called mindtools.com. The link is at the bottom of the website here. Colleen, would you walk us through kind of the 5 key components of strong interpersonal relationships?
I'd be happy to, Jamie. So this is one model. There are many, many models out there, but both Jamie and I had a look at this one and felt that it was the most succinct one that we could find, and that it was something that everyone should easily be able to implement and work on. So when we think about trust, it's about creating those relationships that people can feel some level of trust. As we talked about in the first survey, over and over again in the Gallup 12 survey, people talk about the importance of having a trusted friend at work or a trusted confidant at work. So when we have trust, we have the ability to be able to maybe let down some barriers, let down some walls, and be open and honest about our communications between individuals, between leaders and employees, between teams, because we feel there's a certain level of psychological safety there, and that we can be honest and authentic in the way that we interact with each other. And this also helps to build mutual respect. So when I talk about mutual respect, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to respect someone. What it's speaking to is treating each other with respect. And it's those simple things of having an open mind, or taking the time to listen fully and completely to what might be going on in that conversation with another person. And then there's mindfulness, right? So it's being aware of how we're acting, what we're saying, but also the sense that when somebody is saying something to you, don't worry about formulating that next response. Be a little curious about what that individual is saying to you, and think about what maybe you don't understand about what they're saying, and just asking them some nice open-ended questions to learn more. As we talked in the previous or one technique of doing that is what's called a double click. So when you think of a mouse, just double click on it as you would for a drop-down menu to get more information. And then we look at welcoming diversity. I know for myself, I used to, with the teams that I had, I would create the atmosphere as teams, and we would all come to an agreement with respect to this, that if somebody had a contrarian view or an opinion that was different from what the group had, then we wanted to create the space for them to be able to voice their opinions, ideas, or thoughts, whatever it might be, in a respectful way. But that created much more richness to the conversation and also greater diversity in problem solving, for example. And then I like to think of open communication as the foundation, as we saw in the previous slide, of really being able to create relationships so that people are more engaged to the point of being fully engaged in the work that they do and their interactions between other, them with other individuals, like teams, clients, stakeholders, for example. So again, it's about creating the environment where we can all share in that open communication. And we do that through building that trust and through building that mutual respect with one another and welcoming that diversity to the table. And as we go on here, we'll talk about a few techniques for doing these things. Jamie, what would you like to say about this?
Yeah, well, I think you have a really good point about this is important for team interpersonal relationships, and then that extrapolates out to other stakeholders. So without having this within one team, it's hard to then amplify it across the organization. These skills, these skills that you've talked about, are skills that actually enhance cross-functional relationships, customer relationships, client relationships, and it all starts from within the organization. So it's more of that systems approach to trust and interpersonal relationships. So let's get into those details that you just mentioned. So in the article, these are called strategies to build good working relationships with colleagues. So one is to develop your people skills. And people skills meaning communication skills, trust skills. These are your typical, what would be called soft skills, which, as we know, when we try to develop our soft skills, they're actually harder to apply than tangible skills. So that's a lifelong journey, developing those. Identify your relationship needs. What is it that you need in these interpersonal relationships? Because good interpersonal relationships are about considering each other's needs and expressing what those are. That's part of emotional intelligence. Schedule time to build relationships. They don't happen when we're in a hurry, right? They don't happen when we're too busy. But we need to consciously and intentionally create that space to build the relationships. Focus on your EI, which is emotional intelligence. And I mean, part of emotional intelligence is to be self-aware, understand what emotions we're experiencing, being able to express those appropriately with others, and to be able to take into account other people's emotions so that we're building relationships based on empathy. And then when we have those good relationships, we can make better decisions together, reduce stress, and so forth. The fifth is to appreciate others. And I think that really ties in with the respect. Be positive, right? Like we get what we focus on. And so it's important to remember to focus on what is going well, what can we build on. If we're focusing on the negative, it just can go down a negative trajectory, with our relationship. So what can we be positive about with each other? How can we build on each other's strengths? That type of thing. Manage your boundaries, which I think ties in with the mindfulness you mentioned, Colleen. Being mindful about what we're saying, our body language, how we're approaching the other people. Really important to have boundaries around how we approach things. And then avoid gossiping, right? That really erodes trust. Yeah. I often say, if I'm saying this, would I feel okay about it if the other person I was talking about was there? Would they be okay about it? Probably not, right? So avoid gossiping, and then listen actively. So there's so much to this active listening, but like Colleen said earlier, it's about really being curious, being present, being curious, asking questions, paraphrasing what the other person said so that they know that you heard them, and there can be a clarification if required. And so, I mean, these are 9 ways of really building those working relationships. Colleen, what else comes to mind for you as you're listening to this?
So just a few quick points just to build on that. So at number 3, when it's about scheduling time to build relationships, this can be something as simple as saying good morning to a team member or a colleague and connecting with them that way, and you're building a relationship just by those, 30 seconds of your time. When it comes to being positive, so if something comes to you that you're thinking, oh, I don't know, this is kind of I don't want to deal with this. But if you look at reframing it, refocusing it, and redirecting it to something more positive, you can really turn things around, because usually, no matter what happens, even if you have a big fail, there's always something to learn from it. When you're talking about avoid gossiping, one thing I always remember my mother told me was that if you don't have anything good to say about someone, then don't say anything at all. And that's always stuck with me, right? And
Yes.
then, yeah. And then finally, when you're listening actively, listen deeply and fully. Don't worry about, formulating what your response is to someone. Sit there and be fully present, and don't judge and don't reject. Just listen. Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah, thanks for adding those. Those are really great points. So, whoops, just a moment here. So to sum this up, increasing that engagement, which is where we started, the Gallup poll from 2020 shows that there's still 65% of people that are disengaged. And so increasing engagement is really important. There's a lot of opportunity for organizations there. And it starts with focusing and taking action towards strong interpersonal relationships. Those are built through, as Colleen shared, trust, mutual respect, mindfulness, welcoming diversity, and open communication. And then applying the 9 strategies that we explored on the prior slide. So we always encourage people to take a step-by-step approach. So when looking at these strategies, you might say to yourself, oh, we're doing these things well, but we could build on this one area. One area is plenty. So what will you do? What one thing will you do to increase engagement? So food for thought. And Colleen, will you share about our upcoming forums?
I'd love to. Thanks, Jamie. So Jamie and I are hosting weekly leadership group conversations called Navigating Leadership Realities. We hope that you'll be interested in joining us. We've got a great discussion going with many individuals with our groups. We'll hold them weekly on Wednesdays from 12 noon to 12:30 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. If you'd like to join us, just simply send us an email and we'll provide you with the Zoom link and the password to join the forum. These forums aren't recorded, and we've already agreed as a group that what's said in the group stays in the group, so you don't need to worry about confidentiality. So, if you'd like to join us, you can see the email address here. It's navleadershiprealities@gmail.com. And also, if you have any questions, you'd like to discuss something further, give Jamie and I an email, and we'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you. You can also watch these videos. We've got a few of them up at our YouTube channel, Navigating Leadership Realities. We hope you'll join us there. And if you're interested too, We've got a free tip sheet for you that's innovation and discovery questions. If you'd like a copy of that, don't hesitate to email us at navleadership.realities@gmail.com. So thanks for joining us today. We hope you find this information helpful. Jamie?
Thanks very much, and that's a wrap.